thank you very much for showing up this morning. My name is Scott Fellman from Triton US and Unique Corals. I don't know if some of you may know me from around the block here. Been doing this for a while, so it's kind of fun to bring in Ishan Dasti, founder of Triton Lab in Germany. And today we're going to talk about the Triton method. You hear a lot of it, you see the logo all over the place. You've heard it in the forums, and some of you actually I know have started out working with Triton. And we're going to answer some basic questions and answers that people have submitted via our forum on Reef to Reef and Facebook and some other sources. And then we're going to open up the mic to discussion with Isan, and we'll hopefully answer some of your Triton user questions. The first thing I want to talk about is people say, well, what's involved? How do you get started? Has anybody here used Triton method yet or taken the ICP test? Oh, yeah, a bunch of you. Well, basically, what Triton is all about, it's about what we call empowered reef keeping. It's taking the knowledge from a very detailed water analysis and using that to work on our aquariums in a positive way, to affect change and to understand what's going on. It's a really wonderful time right now. What we have is we have a simple test where you're collecting 2 vials of water and you're taking the sample, you're registering on the Triton website, and we can go over that later. You pop it in an envelope, send it off to us, we send it to Germany, and the test is run on a ICP OES machine. And ICP OES stands for Inductively Coupled Plasma Optical Emission Spectroscopy. Very fancy name, try that at your next cocktail party. It's basically a way of saying what you're vaporizing water, right? And turning it into its constituent molecules. And what does that do besides look really cool? And I've been to the lab, it looks really cool. What does it do? It gives you a very detailed analysis down to parts per billion of 32 different trace elements that are in your system. So for the first time probably in the reef hobby, we have the ability to analyze water on an incredibly detailed level and to analyze water and get great information on what's going on in our systems. And not only does this change the game in terms of what we can learn about our tanks, it changes the game in what we put in our tanks. You know, for years, how many people have been in the hobby 10, 12, 15 years? Wow. Remember for a long time there were those all-in-one type of additives with different types of trace elements, and you're adding a little of this, a little of that. And the only recommendations are, we knew that some of this stuff was in seawater, we knew that our corals and perhaps even our fishes needed some of this stuff, and we would add these formulations not knowing exactly why or how much or what we were doing. Well, for the first time, what Triton will do when you get your results back, it'll tell you exactly where your tank is on these 32 parameters and how to make any adjustments if necessary to get them in line with essentially the matrix of natural seawater. So it's a really great way to get involved in your aquarium at a more detailed level. And it all starts with that test. And we have a couple of tests we're going to give away to some lucky people here today, so we'll do that a little later. Touching on just one quick touch points with Triton, one of the keys with Triton is stability. And we say stability meaning what? Stability of environmental parameters. One of the nice things about Triton is that ability to monitor what's going on in your tank on a very detailed level. The ability to control that through the addition of precise trace elements and precise mixes of chemicals and compounds so that you can keep a consistent environment. It's not about adding a little of this, a little of that. It's about consistency within a range. We're going to talk this morning about some of the practices within Triton and some of those questions, and then I'm sure you have some burning questions that you want to have for us. So let's go right into the first questions that we've gotten. These are from some people on Reef to Reef. One of the first questions, somebody asked, can Kalkwasser be used with the Triton method? And Isan, maybe you want to touch on that. Let me grab the mic here for you.
Okay, mate, come sit down here. Well, honestly, you can't in the way that you used it in the past, because the system is balanced. That means that we add in a special amount of like every element that is needed in seawater, and it's based on the KH measurement. So by adding Kalkwasser, you will change, you know, you will like manipulate the KH also. And then this is causing that the rest of the calculation will not, you know, match anymore. You can do that, but it's actually then not the Triton method anymore. You know, so I wouldn't do it. Let's say that this way. We have the next one also.
Yeah, well, you know, let's just touch on this real quickly. The operating KH is 8 And why is that, Isan? Because people want to know, why do they need to get their DKH at 8 before they go into Triton?
Because, mate, when you have a droplet test, you know, the most people will know that there is a deviation to a droplet test. Okay, so actually in seawater it's 6.5 kH, but when we're going for having a safe thing for a customer, we say 8 because the DKH could be like maybe a deviation of 1. You could be at 7 or you could be at 9 when you're at 8. This is not a critical area. But if you try to charge at 6.5 and you are actually at 5.5, this is something that is causing possibly problems in your tank. So we gone for 8. The advanced Triton user afterwards always tries to go maybe to 7 or something, you know, and then it's getting closer to seawater. But 8 is quite a good thing to start with it. This is what we say. Okay?
All right, let's go to the next question here. Somebody said, if you can read this, if testing indicates that the system requires additional trace elements, can they be added into the actual containers of base elements? The base elements, are you familiar with the Triton? I probably should go back on the Triton. The basic Triton method involves dosing a 4-part solution, which has an alkalinity, a calcium component, major and minor trace elements. And they're dosed at the same rate into your aquarium, the idea being to create a stable chemical environment for your corals. When testing dictates that you might need some additional trace elements to bring up levels that are low, we do offer pure trace element solutions, and those can be administered to your aquarium. And I guess the question is, can you mix those in the same container as the base element solutions?
No. No, I mean you could, but it's just too complex. It will be too messed up. It's better to do that controlled. This method is made to have control over your tank. As long as you're not, I mean, if you're a PhD chemist, surely you will do that. But as long as you're not feeling safe with it, the better control you have when you add that singly. That's just about the control. The way we think is control the tank. So singly is just single elements, just better.
All right, let's go to the next one here. This is a good one. A lot of people ask this question. They say when they collect the sample and send it off to Triton, what happens if you're feeding your aquarium? Does that impact the water chemistry? Does that impact the test in a significant way that can skew the results?
Yes. So what we don't want to have, to be honest, is particles in the water. So particles in the container are not crucial, but they can cause problems. So when you feed the tank, and I mean when there is a myces in there, it's messing up the test, because this small amount of water, it will be polluted with whatever is in the myces possibly. So, in analytics, we want to have as clean as possible. We cannot filter the sample. I'm telling you this right now, because we will contamine the sample by filtering it. So, it's a PPB test, it's a trace element test, so we're not touching the sample at all. So please, if it's possible, don't feed or touch the water or whatever. Well, it's just visible particles. If there is a visible amount of particles in the sample, just refill it and send it again. I mean, half an hour should be okay. That's not the point. Even if you're not seeing stuff floating around, that should be okay. Now, it's not like everybody is having problems with that. It's not happening too often, but maybe 0.1% of the tests come out with a bit higher phosphorus, which is caused by something that is in the sample and dissolved over time, and we still need some time to ship them over. So yeah, it's better not having any particles in the sample, would be better. Yep.
Okay. One more point.
Yeah. Just that don't mean if you're always having particles in the water, then you can test it. It's just not when you manipulate it. Okay, so it's possible that you have a particle problem in the water. So you could have a lot of particular phosphorus and you don't know that. in this case, that's fine. It's just not, when the tank is looking clear all day long, and then for 5 minutes it's getting polluted. This is not the way to test your tank in this moment. But if you have a tank that is just, you know, let's say cloudy all over the time, you can test all the time. So then it's even okay to have the particles in there, because the test would show, yes, the real, you know, the real thing that is happening in your tank.
That's a good point. Now, those of you that have started or studied the Triton method probably noted that Triton systems have a macroalgae refugium. And does anybody here already have a refugium in their system that they're not using Triton? Which is really kind of cool, because they were very common, what, 5, 10, 15 years ago. They seem to have fallen out of favor more recently. And now with the advent of the Triton method, they're back in vogue, and it's really interesting to see that. So we have a lot of people with really interesting collections of macroalgae, and I happen to be a big fan of macroalgae. And a lot of people say, well, what is the purpose, first of all, of macroalgae in a Triton system? Well, first of all, it functions as a nutrient export mechanism, and Triton. One of the questions people asked actually is, the dosing in the Triton elements, does that not account for macroalgae in the mix as well? In other words, they draw from the same trace elements as the corals, some of them, right? So is that included in the formula, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, we support the algae with the base elements also. So it is a holistic system. I know the holistic word is a bit of a, you know, like overused word, but it's matching quite good what we're doing. It's like we give the algae what they need, so we give the corals what they need. So normally, you know, in a modern kind of reef keeping, people started not liking algae. You know, they started to, oh damn, I have algae, this is, you know, this is not what I want. And so you know, supporting algae just left our reef keeping hobby a bit. And we just turning it back around. It's like, they like to say, it's a bit of a old school reef keeping thing. But you need to know why this is old school. Because at one point the algae stopped being able to give us what we want from the tank. Like, you know, at one point the nutrients went down enough. We wanted to have SPS, really nice colors, really good growth, and they're living in very, very clean, nutrient pure water. So what happened is people started to go away from the algae, saying, this is not going to work, this will never work. We just started to use zeolites, we used carbon sources, bacteria, because we want to have it even lower than the algae could do it. But this is where we, you know, at this point it started to like move away. Like two forms of reef keeping came up. The SPS super, you know, high-end shiny coral thing, and the other one, you know, and the other one just, you know, was always there. It was the old school way. But at this point we went back to this point and we said to ourselves, okay, but the algae was good, but why can't it get the nutrients down enough? Why is it not going to be like as strong as we want it to have? And from this point on, we developed into another way. We started to push the algae more. So we looked for what is missing, what is the reason for, you know, not being able to get the algae to do what the zeolite is doing or what the bacteria are doing. And the reason was that we not cared about the algae at all. That we never, I mean, also algae needs some stuff. You know, it's just like a plant in our garden. So we started to add metals, and, you know, Julian Sprung like wrote something up like years ago, and manganese is something that algae loves, and iron is something that Randy Holmes talked about a long time ago. So we started to experiment with these things, and we found a solution and add them to the same containers that we use for our corals. So you need to add something. They are not, you know, messing it up when you mix them. And this is how it works, right? And yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the question was something else, but it's crazy. Yeah. So we back to you.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a good point. Is now you understand the purpose of macroalgae in a system, and the question of what's the best macroalgae to use. is probably the one that's going to grow for you. But as a macroalgae fan, I could tell you in some parts of the United States, we can't keep calopa. For example, in California, we're not allowed to sell it. So calopa is a very prolific grower. Chaetomorpha is sort of the darling of the macroalgae set. How many people use chaetomorpha in their refugium? It's like everybody has chaetomorpha. But there's interesting ones like Botricladia, the red ones. Halaminia, which is a very beautiful macroalgae. They call it dragon's tongue. It's actually beautiful in and of itself. Very rapid growing. And one of the things I was talking about, and it may come up if you drop by the Triton booth, you can talk to Vincent Thomas and Tim Caldwell, who are big Triton users in the UK. In a macroalgae refugium, they'll grow and grow and grow, and eventually one will dominate the other. So whichever one grows the best is probably really the best question.
That's also something really important. You know, you please don't do one thing. Don't try to grow one kind that you like in your tank. Like, that's not the purpose of doing it. So leave the one grow that is growing the best for you. This like algae will be adapted to the parameters of the environment it's growing, like, which is your tank water. So let's say, you know, I think I said that yesterday also, but if you change in the parameters of your tank, if your tank is getting older over the years, you know, there will be a change of your environment. You're getting more corals, you put in some basslettes, you're doing, you know, you're changing the tank and you're feeding differently, and possibly you have a new pump and another kind of contamination with any kind of metal. So you're changing the environment constantly, and constantly also the algae, the dominant algae in your filter will change. So don't do one thing, don't cut the one off that is looking rubbish, just don't look at it. Just leave it grow, and this one will work the best for your water, because this is why we have it, right? This is a really important point that many people just try to grow all the time Cheeto because, you know, or maybe some don't like Cheeto because it's going to the pump and blocking it, and then trying to do something else. But that's actually not the way Triton works. It would be like a bit of stressy for the whole system if you try to, you know, even interfere with growth, you know.
I think it gets back to the whole thing that you said about a holistic system, and a holistic system involves more than one species of lots of things. Okay, next question from our users. This is interesting. People say, well, why do I have to take out some salt water from my tank and replace it with some fresh water? Isn't this a water change? And before we get to answer that question, I just want to answer something that comes up a lot in the United States. Is people say, oh, they call us up and they say, I really want to, I understand you have this program where you don't have to change water. First of all, I think that's a bad way to look at it. That you're not doing the Triton method to avoid changing water. Triton is about providing, as Isan said, a stable, holistic environment for your animals. One of the cool things about Triton method, though, that we found is that it essentially is a deconstructed water change. When you think about it, what is the purpose of a water change? It's to export things that you don't want and put back things that you do want. And by dosing exactly what your corals need and taking out some of the things you don't through the growth of macroalgae and so forth, you're doing that. But let's talk about the principle, or if you will, of taking the water out of the system. What is the rationale for that?
So you mean the question on this, yeah. the answer on this one? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a definition thing. I mean, now water change, most of the people would say water change is taking a bucket of water, putting salt in, taking a bucket out, putting the bucket in. Others would say take a syringe of 5 milliliter out, get it away, and 5 milliliter in would be a water change. It's a definition thing. Actually, because we're putting in salts and everything, like, we need also to be aware that the salinity will go up, right? So we need to take out water and replace with fresh water at the point where this happens. But it's not the traditional water change that people would do. So it's doing a water change with a dosing pump. I mean, I'm fine with that. You know, it's not like we, you know, Triton is not about not water changing. It's just a logical way of thinking and reef keeping. Some people say it's Spock's way of, Mr. Spock's way of reef keeping. So it's just like the water change is a tool, and when it's needed, we would do one. Like when I mean, there was a viral video of my clam went crazy and spawned, and in this case, I mean, we need to get this stuff out of the tank. It's not going to work, leave it in there and just wait until, you know, the skimmer is, I mean, we have 1 week or something, you know, so, you know, I mean, a lot of people are attracted because, oh, no water change. I mean, this was like 4 or 5 years ago, but they get this first for the Triton method because this is making things easy, but the Triton method is not about no water changing. It's not like something that we are super proud of. It's just a part of the philosophy that we follow, which is a logical approach to reef keeping, something that people understand on their own, not listening just to people like me, or especially not to you, you know, but it's like, you know, answering your own question. This is the way of Triton, and one of this would be at a special point, even if you don't listen to us and do your water change, at a special point, you will, you know, by testing your water with ICP or whatever, find out that the water change that you do actually, or possibly for you, is maybe not really needed. And then you stop it. And this is just something that we tell you, but you don't need to listen. You will find out on your own when you do the water tests and see your potassium and lithium and whatever. And if you test your salt, for example, and many people here have done that in the US, like I can see that they're sending, like, you know, chemical water samples. But when you do that and see it on your own, you really know it. There is a difference between knowledge and just believing somebody else that is successful. You know, I'm a successful reefer, but you know, what works for me often not works for somebody else. Or this was like the case years ago. So we try to have something that is reproducible for you, that you can understand what is happening in your own tank. Because, I mean, when you ask me, I'm like, I don't know, 3,000 miles, 4,000 miles away. You guys are sitting in front of the tank. So you see your tank every day. You know the best what is good for your tank or not. We need to deliver you as much information as possible to make the right decisions. And, you know, 100% of the Triton users will logically, like, find out that the water change is not needed for them. So we just tell you this and that's it, you know. There's no need to tell them. They would all stop at one point when they see it's useless, but it's easier to say that's the way.
So hopefully that addresses the issue of no water changes. So moving on to the next question. Okay, this is a great one because the economics comes into play. Do I need to buy all 32 elements? So you have all these things. Do I need to buy them all?
Yeah, double them. Buy them all. Yeah. No. That's not the case at all. It's just like we have the set of trace elements. It's a very advanced thing. You know that you can buy trace elements in a bottle, and the only thing you know is that there is a liquid in there and it's looking like that, and there are some trace elements written on the label, and that don't mean that there's some trace element in there. Okay, so you buy something that you don't know what it is and you add it to your tank, and possibly it works for you or possibly not, but this thing that we gave you is, if you add one of our stuff into your tank and ship your sample in, you will see that it's in there. So we see you have bought something that you know what it is, because it's anonymous tests, so I would never know. You can put vanadium in there and just ship it. But the other nice thing to it is, it will, like the base elements are matching 30% of the whole tanks worldwide quite good. But it's only 30, because every tank is so different. I have a 1 meter clam in my tank and 1 meter corals, and a lot of other people have just LPS in there or something that isn't the same thing. So how is it possible to make a method up that is matching every tank on this planet? I'm a scientist, I don't like the word, but this is impossible. Okay, it was most likely not possible. So what you need to know then is, if you want to get it individual, you need to have the possibility to add something that possibly your special tank will consume more than mine or your brother's or your neighbor's. And this is why we have this stuff. I need to say that the kind we do, the reef keeping, or you know, the knowledge of what all these trace elements are doing is not a given thing right now, because nobody else have done this before. So this is something that we will find out in the years we do our science, and we find out about all the testings. I mean, we have done 15,000 tests over the years now, and we get some information, but you will still need more. And some things are, you know, for example, in America, you all have so high lithium, and you know, people starting to realize, okay, they need to be this is something really American. It's not anywhere else in the world that you have lithium in the water as much. You know, so to be honest, I don't know if we will ever sell lithium in America. Maybe just, but yeah, but that's it. You know, it's just like, you go with a basis, you start your tank, and after maybe 4 months or something, you start adding just iodine if it's low in your tank. Why do you want to add iodine if it's always good? You know, there is no reason for that. So don't buy all the 32 elements. When the time comes, you go in the LFS, you go in the shop, buy you what is needed, buy what you want to try, and that's okay. And I say what you want to try because a lot of them are not listed as crucial. So even if they're not in your water, it will still appear a green sign. So it's still okay. It's just saying to you, if you want to add, and you, because we don't know if you have a positive effect out of it, you add this amount. And the way that people do it in the UK, for example, is going there, buying it, then they add a bit of vanadium, and when you have like maybe 100 corals in there, and 50 of them get really nice polyp extension, super good color, then they carry on doing it because it's a good thing for them. But if just the one coral that you get for your birthday and you even don't like it, you know, from mom or whatever, and standing in the corner, and this one is showing 2 more polyps, your decision, but I wouldn't, I mean, if mom is saying, but you know, I wouldn't put up vanadium in. So this is something that, again, is done by you. It is your logical decision to do or not, you know. There's some things like iodine I would always add. I know Randy wouldn't, but I mean, it's a good thing for the tank, to be honest. But yeah, the rest of the stuff, I mean, we will inform you, sure, we'll inform you if you know something's getting crucial. But for now, you know, just try in a controlled way, trying. That's Triton. No.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next question, how often do I need to test? You know, that's a good question, right? To start, I mean, the recommended procedure, and you can chime in obviously on this, you obviously need to do an initial test to find out what is going on with your water, to get a kind of a baseline for what your system is at the present time. Then you'll get that detailed analysis, and if you choose to make adjustments using Triton or other products or whatever the recommended adjustments are, at that point you would probably wait typically another 30 days to 45 days, do another test and see what the impact of those changes are. In a perfect world, you might do another test right after, you know, 30 days after that to see what the consumption of those elements was. And then from that point on, it's variable. You'll talk to a lot of guys that do tests 4 times a year, 3 times a year, 6 times a year. It's your choice. I mean, Isan, do you have any more information on that?
Yeah, well, again, you know, it's not our decision to tell you when, how often, or whatever to test. The method itself, the holistic thing, will work if you're going to do it like every 2 or 3 months. That should be fine, because we can, like, you know, we can make sure that the stuff that you use is not contaminated or whatever, and then stretch the period. If you're doing something else, if you're doing your own experiments, I mean, you can do tests every week. It's a tool. It's just this. It's like a screwdriver. You know, when you need it, use it. right? Anyway, even if you know, for any reason, just do it one time in a year, just once, you will find, you know, the errors that you have never seen before. I mean, honestly, this is 99.8% of your water, and everybody that is doing the old version, like the droplet testing and whatever, is just doing 6.8. So 93% are missing, you know, and do it one time, it will, even if everything is okay, you will find out everything is okay, you know. So it's not like, now there is no given things and every week, otherwise it will not work or something. It's just the knowledge part, the control that you need to have, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And oh, this is a common question too. If it takes 7 to 10 days to get a test result, will this affect the results? And I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
No, it will not, Scott. Will not. The thing is, the way we test is like what do you call it? I call it atomization. You know, okay. You just atomize the sample. So you know, when we put the sample into the machine and suck it in, and it's get into the plasma. In the moment it's hitting the plasma, it's 10,000 degrees hot. You know, it's just super hot. It's so hot that it's not vaporized or something. It will just be destroyed. Okay, so it's just atoms that are left. Even no water is it. You cannot say it's water. It's H and O. It's just all destroyed. So what you have out of that is, it's not really important if you know, if it's closed, it's a closed container. You can freeze it, cook it. You can do whatever you want with the inner part. The atoms will still stay in this container. Okay, except you acidify. Don't acidify. But you know, I mean, yeah. But whatever, you know, nothing would happen to it. And when I open it and put it in the machine, it will still measure all the atoms in there. We're not measuring any molecules with this machine. You know, there is no nitrate that could change form or something. We're measuring the basic part, the atom. So even if there's phosphorus in there and it's changing form and 10 bacteria eating it up and you know, and the bacteria is eaten by another bacteria and the sun is going there and there's things growing in there, they are all made of atoms. So they're all made of the smallest part, and this is what we measure. So it will not change anything, right? I mean, you know, really low amounts will change that we don't care of. Let's say that.
Okay. How often should I test? I think we already covered that, so we're not going to go into that. And now it's time for the fun part. This is questions from anybody that has a question. Craig Bingham, why don't we start with you?
So going back to a couple of questions, I think. First on the question on how often you should test. I guess I had a question on when a person should test with respect to dosing some of these elements, because some of them, like iron, is extraordinarily unstable in seawater. So the number of you get back out of your test would probably vary over hours after you add the iron. So is there guidance on that?
Yeah, there's something that is called ECS. We call it error correction sheet, because this test is mainly done to detect errors, right? It's not the dosing part that is as important to us. Like I said, it's something that people decide on their own, because there is not enough knowledge right now there to tell them you need to do this, is crucial and whatever. Like in the ECS, we write up that, for example, iron is something that is so low amounts in seawater that we cannot detect it even in the ppb amount. Like the real seawater will be like ppt, like parts per trillion amounts. So people dose iron over years, like Randy does, and I've done that. The problem that comes with it is, because of iron is not really, you know, stable in seawater, you use chelators to, you know, complex in it to keep it in solution in your tank. And sometimes, and this is not counting for our irons, just iron, sometimes, depending on what the guy is using, or, you know, the company is using, people somehow tend to overdose it, so it appears in the test, and then you know that, oh, I've overdosed it. So it's because when it's appear with us, it's already too high. Then just say, it's again the decision of the user, but we would say stop it. Then it's too much, and then or dose less or something like that. So you have a bit of an idea what you're doing. If you don't have this measurement, you will never find out. So and it is also something that it is a very strange thing. Manganese is the same. It's a bit of we start to understand slowly why, but we need to have more data to really understand what is happening in the specific tanks that show up iron or show up manganese. I mean, manganese, same thing. It will normally not appear, but.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that your limits of quantitation and detection for the ICP method are high enough that if you see a signal for iron, you're probably putting too much in.
Correct. You have the same with chromium and cobalt because they're also very, very low. So you would need an MS to detect them in the and adjust them. But some other things are quite good to adjust. Like, for example, vanadium, even being close to the limit of detection, you're still able as a reef keeper to adjust it a bit and use it. The same counts for iodine is quite good with the new machines, and I mean, you have not 32 elements that you can perfectly adjust. That's not true, and that's also not what we're saying. But you have just much more control and conscious control over what you're doing compared to what we did before. That's the real thing,
I think it's interesting to note that the limits of detection for your method for iron and copper are actually not as good as the best color method tests that are available to talk to. I would routinely measure 1 or 2 parts per billion of iron with colorimetric methods in just about every reef tank that I measure. And I think that your limit of quantification is a little bit higher than that for your ICP, right?
It is. I mean, we're using it in a very applied form. Like, we're using it in a very practical form. We're not really going for the academic scientific thing, because to be honest, whatever Craig, I can hear you, but as a product that is coming to a hobby that is used to colorimetric testing, which tells them over years that they measure from 0 to 50 ppm or something. When we touch ground with a sophisticated device like our ICP, the first thing, this was the first time for the people hearing about the LOD, but that everything will have a LOD. So, it is a nice thing to it that people are starting to get closer to the scientific way, but you need to understand that 90% of them still not understand under 4.6 ppb. If this is coming with their brother and their neighbor, and they give him a call and saying, this is impossible, we cannot all have 4.6 ppb of copper. This is where we started to say it's 0, because they know it. There will be a time where people like you, Andy, and me possibly, explained it enough to make them understand that not detectable don't mean that you need to pay extra for this element. But in the moment it is like that, and we need just to work on it and get information over.
I think the point of contrast that I wanted to make is that there's no doubt that your ICP testing can address a large number of parameters that people haven't been able to look at before. But that doesn't make it universally superior, I think, to some of the older methods for certain cases. And 2 of those cases are iron and copper.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure even, I can tell you that, for example, also mercury you know, you could do it better with other methods. Even if I go singly for every element, if I would just go singly for them, calibrate them singly and just go single element analysis with this ICP, it would be much better. Or if I would use a standard addition method, so just we have two samples, we could do it. But we needed a product that is, you know that ICP testing is much more expensive normally because of these things. You know, you need a method that is still valuable for the reef keeper, that a lot of people can afford, and on the other side deliver a good value of information. It's not about me saying it is, I can measure with my method best ever iron. That's not true, that's not what I'm saying, but we have a broadband test that is giving you all the macros and all the traces, which is, I'm really proud to do that because that's really difficult. And we can live with some things like, you know, mercury or tin that could glow on the walls, right? And then, because if bores appears, the only thing that a reef keeper would do is change the water, get rid of it. You know, nobody want to add tin or mercury, and this is the way we adapted it to get the good value and affordable test. You know, that's, I mean, it is a bit of a challenge to get this information out to the world, because we measured all of us reef keepers measured maybe 6 or 7 parameters. We used to that. Now, with one hit, we give them 32, and you know, it's normal that, you know, things are waving around and people are, you have all these ideas going around. We will need some people like you, some people like Randy, some, you know, just to get it on a real level again and explain things. Because to be honest, only me, that's, you know, even the English would be
Thanks. Let's get to that question in the back. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm interested in the, I guess the main variables from the initial test and the subsequent tests. I mean, the initial test, most people are going to have, you know, RO water from their municipal water supply, whatever they're dosing, you know, the salt mix that they're using any trace elements and some dissolved organic matters. So these things are pretty common. I think, is the main variable in that mix the municipal water supply? I mean, the salt mixes are going to vary and the amount of dosing, but what is it you're really, what's the main variable you're testing on the initial test? And then once you've started the Triton method, then what's the main variable, because your municipal water supply is constant.
Well, you know, you mean when you do the first test, right?
Yeah.
What we're looking for. This is what you want to know. Why is you do it?
What's the variable from test to test? Like my test, you know, in the Chicago area.
That's
or versus. Is that the main thing you're looking for, which is?
You know what? It's like a bit of a. You have in reef keeping, we try to avoid errors. This is all we try. We don't use metals close to the tank. We try to be conscious, adding good food and stuff like that. The only thing that you have or had to be sure that you have done that was your corals are not dying. That means if you had made a crucial mistake, your corals would die. You know, if people, you know, add the water of the bored fish to the tank and it's getting higher and higher and higher in copper and they don't do water change, you know, it's getting a crucial amount, you kill your animals. But you will only see it in this moment. You will see, oh, my tank is, you know, feeling not good, I'm getting RTN, whatever. What we have done with ICP is we put it something in between these two things. So what you will now see is that, you know, some crazy things will appear in your test, possibly and hopefully before you start in, you know, ending up with a result that you don't want. This is a wall, an error detecting wall that you have. This is like a firewall, you know. So that's all about the test. The test is about 70% is about error detection. So something is wrong with you doing something wrong as a reef keeper, and that's initially and always what we check. You know, it is the most crucial part of it. It's not adding things. Adding things is extra that people they want to do that. But the other way, the thing that really counts is don't get errors in your tank. Don't add something that you don't want to add. Like, you know, copper. People add copper without knowing it. And that's the crucial thing.
So then 30 days later, you're testing if you're doing the Triton method correctly.
Yes.
60 days later,
yeah.
Am I adding the correct ingredients?
Sorry.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you do the Triton method, you know, you have a controlled system by us. I mean, we put in these things through the ICP also, like our salts and everything. It's just a quality control machine in analytics. So what you have is you're stretching the in between the test. You can stretch it because the fluctuation will be not too high, and you're sure that you're not contaminating with copper, for example, because it's tested on the ICP before. In the moment where you do something else, then you should test more often, and maybe you have more fluctuations, you know, but it's up on you. It's a tool, an experimental thing. You just like cooking. Yeah.
So thank you. We're going to wrap it up because we've got to move on, but we're at the Triton US booth. Ishan will be there all day at the Triton booth right at the entrance of the show. We just want to give away a couple of tests. So who's never ever tried the Triton method and is intrigued by it? Who do you want to pick? Do we just throw this up at random? Let's see if it makes it over there. You got it. And anybody on that side? Okay. Why don't we just walk it over? Oh, you got the hand up real high. Let's give it to you. Thanks again for putting up with us, and hope we see you during the show. And like I said, Ihsan will be stuck at the booth throughout the day to answer some questions and a little more time than we have. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.